want to, I didn't feel like I really wanted to be to that level of dedication, the way a medical doctor has to take care of patients and be on call. And I knew eventually one day I might want to have a family, so I wouldn't want to, um, have that particular type of lifestyle of being on call. I also didn't want to be a nurse, although my daughter is a nurse currently. My personality fit to what the dental areas, were going to be. Recently, have we went to a dental installation, which is like officers and organized dentistry, which is like the political arm of dentistry, just the way, a lot of industries have lobbyists. I'm sure the school has one for CUNY and SUNY as well. Um, and it was a dental student that had been mine. She had previously been a dental assistant, went to hygiene school, and she after dental school she came to Interfaith Hospital to be a resident. She stayed a second year to really tune up her skills, and now she's joining a practice of yet another former student in Park Slope. So all of that comes around, and so day to day. So what do I do? So what do root canal specialists do? We take patients out of pain. Patients come in pain or swelling from a cracked tooth, from a traumatic injury, a child falls off a bicycle, too many old fillings on top of each other. So any of those particular scenarios is where the specialist comes in and into plays. I really enjoy that aspect. I really like the microbiology of my job. It's not just like routine, getting somebody non-drilling and sending them to the front desk. It's really medicine and dentistry together. And you have to understand and respect the biology of what we're doing. So all those course loads that you take, biology 1, chem 2, organic chemistry, all those things that you don't think you're ever going to need, you do it in dentistry. I tell some of my residents, this is a physics problem. When you have a force and it says F equals ma, the acceleration of what matter is through the length of a piece of material, all those things are utilized. So at the time of when you're taking those 4 required courses for medicine or dentistry fields, you're thinking, I'm never going to know and use this. You do, and you don't really appreciate it till much, much later in life. So briefly, I'll talk about one of the questions to speak to you about is examples of projects that I do. So I work full-time. I teach part-time. Teaching is not, I pay for parking. I drive like 2.5 hours, each way to get in from Long Island. It's pretty far. But that's my most rewarding day of the week. Why? Because when you take an oath to do no harm as a doctor, you are supposed to, and you need to nourish the next generation of either young minds or communities of need that do not have adequate healthcare, medicine, dental care. Right now, with the influx of migrants, we see so many families who are in our hospital system. We can't even get appointments for them, but they need care. And we're doing a lot of different things with resident training and, trying to expand some of the hours that residents have to, seek care to take care of populations of need. Another population of need that I'm actively involved in are veterans. I also am the chairperson of the New York State Dental Foundation, which is up in Albany. And what we do is we fundraise money and then we give that money out for different programs. So, somebody may either donate supplies or equipment. So if a hygiene school wants to make a satellite site in another area, like we fundraise for it and then we give the money away or we buy the products that the particular area needs. We did screenings upstate in the Hudson Valley area outside of Albany. So many people, they waited hours and hours online. So that's the philanthropic arm of what a career in dentistry and medicine could do, that on your off hours, so to speak, I'm on Zooms and I'm always writing grants to give money away and to bother people to give. Sometimes they don't want to see my name in an email, and I get that. But that's what I do.
Right.
So that secondary project is taking care of veterans. We always assume that veterans could go to a VA hospital, but the rule is that unless you had a service-connected injury of the head and neck area, you cannot go there for dental care. You can get medical care at a VA hospital, But dental is very specific. So again, if you had a piece of shrapnel or a head and neck injury from the neck up, then you're entitled to dental care. And it's very limited of what can be done. So we do fundraisers and fairs, and I wrote a grant for NYU, and they took my skeleton project and was able to get millions of dollars more. And they have a clinic twice a month on a Saturday that's been flourishing for many years now. But I was the originator of the program. And I remember when I went to Dean Hirsch, he was like, "You're just way too tenacious from me." And I was like, "Okay, but are you going to say yes? Because I'm not leaving your office until you say yes." So those are the rewarding things. Challenges, that's what I enjoy most about my career, is helping people, mentoring students and young minds, to any field of the dental care. There's so much research that shows that periodontal disease and dental disease affects blood sugar levels for diabetes, heart disease. So just because people think the head is disconnected to the rest of the body, it's not really true. And we have a lot of evidence that we're all one. And what happens here can affect the heart in different areas. So that's what I like about, my career. I just don't sit in an office, go home, turn the key and go home and, eat dinner. I am constantly online or finding money or having people introduce me to politicians. I just had a woman from the Bronx is inviting me to a senatorial thing, New York State senatorial in a couple of weeks in February. Always looking to make connections. Why? Because there's always someone out there that I may know that I have not met yet that may need a connection that I can get them. And I'm always very happy of building other people's edifices, meaning that I don't mind being the mortar between the bricks for other people. I don't need the glory of like, oh, I, did this wonderful thing. I really enjoy when other people can find it in themselves to have a project and they just don't know where to go. And I just give the boost to, find where they can, facilitate an oral health project, whether it be at a health fair or something similar. So at the place that I was speaking about in Hudson Valley, people waited hours and hours and hours. A woman came and she had a very weird particular swelling inside and outside of her face, and the x-rays showed something that to me appeared was a cancerous lesion. Anyway, it took weeks for her to get a biopsy. Nobody wanted to take the Medicaid. Nobody wanted to help her out. Weeks of calling people. Okay, how about now? Can you do it this week? Can you do suffering and pain? She was, and everything was caught in time. She doesn't have to lose her jawbone because occasionally some things are very aggressive and dissections have to be made. So just a simple, thank you. Like, you were the only person that could do this. Yeah, but it was a team. It was people that are like-minded, that are not going to listen to when someone says no. And I think that's something that sometimes is scary. You hear somebody goes, "Oh, you can't possibly apply to that. Don't you don't have the grades for that." There's always ways. If your heart is in something that you really enjoy, there's always a way of doing something over. Another dental assistant is at Farmingdale State College now on Long Island, and he too was involved in a program. And I helped him write his, personal statement about himself. He had been many different careers, and one of them had been to be a used car salesman. So like he had that persona of like trying to get over on people. And I was like, no, I was like, we're going to use that to our advantage. And how that ability to connect with people and get them to purchase something from you meant that you did have the people skills to be a doctor of some entity. So that's really what I, like to, be, when people say, what do you want to be known for? My residents, they call me MM for Mama Moringa. And they send me all kinds of pictures of their children now and different things. And my husband has a rule that it could be up to 2 a.m. that they can call, because sometimes, time zones, if they move to California, that's 3 hours. Mountain time is another. I have a resident that moved to Singapore, and we've done some outreach to the islands of Jamaica and different international relief efforts there. Last year, one of our clinics burnt down when we were in Jamaica on day 2, and the pastor of the church in St. Elizabeth Parish, cities and towns are called parishes in Jamaica, and we rebuilt everything. We cleaned, painted the clinic over again, fixed the electrical problems that were going. And meanwhile, I had been suffering for long COVID. So the organization that sent me and 3 of my residents wanted to just really extract us and to take us home. And I said, no, I said, I can't leave 25 students here who are frightened about the fire, who don't have much direction. And when you're a team, you stay together for the team. You don't take an easy way out. Days later, when we finally did come home, the soot that was stuffed in my nose was amazing. Every time I coughed or were breathing in a a face mask that I wear in the in the dental situation here, still had black soot all over it. One of these things. But it was something that I was not going to turn my back on. One of the other mentors, his wife had just gotten a cancer diagnosis, so he flew back to Illinois, which left only 25 students with 1 general dentist. And these people had waited 3 years because during COVID, no one was allowed to travel. And that's probably why no one checked really the fans in the clinic. There was no air conditioning because there's never been air conditioning. We were lucky that we built the clinic of how it was attached to that church many, many years ago. But I wasn't going to leave the students behind. And my two of my residents, they were like, well, let's just go home, or why don't we have them send us home another day? We'll, take a ride to a beach. And I said, no, you were here to provide care to communities in need, and we're going to stay. And it wasn't until almost 6 months later did they really understood what that meant when they were awarded and acknowledged at a national endodontic specialty meeting. And how, people saw the pictures of what happened. And they're like, how did you guys stay here? Why did you stay here? And they stood up and said, Dr. Moringa instilled in us things that we would never forget. And we are so proud that we did stay and took care of what we needed, because they took care of the other students too. I walked around. You haven't had a break in 10 minutes. You need some water. You go take a break. Let me make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was that kind of thing that we just all try to put together. My pulmonologist was not very happy with me because my long COVID really was very expressive after I came back. But I knew I was going to be taken care of. I knew I was not, in harm, so to speak. But it was dangerous and exciting at the same time, if you could imagine. So that's what I do. I fix teeth, but I also fix lives of people all over. And that part's my passion. And if you're interested in a career in dentistry or the allied sciences, or you're not really sure, my email address is Apex Locator. So it's spelled APEXLOCATER 60@gmail.com.
And we'll definitely have my assistant here, Sasha, put it in the chat for the
great.
students. Dr. Moringa, I'm glad you're okay after
Yeah.
that experience. It's
Thank
a
you.
wonderful story to hear. And you did get through most of the questions. However, I do have 2
Sure, go ahead.
that you didn't really cover just yet. So with all that you do, who would you say would be the best type of person or the best fit for this type of career?
So you have to really be a people person, but you don't have to be a big chatterbox of social stuff. But I have to tell you, when I interview students and residents, I immediately do not look at their grades. So I don't want anybody on this call to go, I was told by an anatomy professor, don't even bother to reply. I don't. I look up at their personal statement, because there's something in the words that people choose that tells me what their heart says. And that's how I base my selection on. And very often I'm very able to influence other committee members. And so I don't want anyone to feel that, you have to be a studious person, you have to have A's in organic chemistry, because I did not. At Brooklyn College, I had to repeat organic chemistry too. I got a B plus in the first half, and I couldn't get a C in the second half. I was like, I can't apply to, the allied medical professions with a C, and I had to take it over. And my parents were like, now that's, you got to take it over. That's more money per course. And I worked extra hard on Macy's right up the road on Flatbush Avenue at the time when it was there, because I worked there for like 15 years. Um, and so I spent the money to take it over to get a better grade. So all those small things of showing that, of that you care, I think is the perfect person. So it's an imperfect world, medicine and dentistry, imperfect careers, but I don't want anyone to ever be discouraged of saying someone closed the door on me, because I'll be there to reopen it if you need.
Okay, and it is good to know that, you don't have to have a perfect 4.0,
Nope,
or, like there's challenges along the way, but you could do it, right? And,
definitely.
and the other question was, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier?
I wish I had gotten involved in the organized dentistry and the political action arm of dentistry and medicine sooner. You're siloed in an office and you think, okay, patients are here, you just go home and come back the next day. But the rewarding part, like I explained, was all of that extra stuff that I don't get paid to do, all that volunteerism. And I wish I had knew about that better, like as a dental student. There were student chapters, um, of that essence that I could have joined, but I didn't. And then what was bad, Miriam, was when I was pregnant during my residency, there was an opportunity now that if you're pregnant, you didn't have to pay dues for certain organizational, things belonging. And they didn't give me a waiver, and I was really angry, Miriam. So I did not belong to that political arm of
Okay,
organized dentistry, of taking care of stuff, because now, of course, that would be impossible, because we understand, women in the workforce, have to, be pregnant. And if you have a complication of pregnancy and it says that you can't work or et cetera, that you're going to find the income to pay like another bill, so to speak. Um, so now we give waivers and we make everything possible so that, not so that it's easy, so that you're not paying attention or whatever, but we make it easy so that you don't have to say no. I want to hear people say, yes, I want to help. Yes, I want to be there. And that's something I would have done earlier in my career, to really have
okay.
gotten involved in that aspect, if I wasn't stubborn, and if I wasn't, and the stubbornness allowed me or forced me not to have been involved and engaged for, some time beforehand. And
All
what
right,
brought me back, Miriam, was some legislative thing that dentistry had to have some kind of suction apparatus to trap old amalgam when you drill, fillings. It became like a state requirement to have this big contraption that was another $2,500 that had to be replaced like every 2 years. And the filters were expensive. And I was like, well, why do we have to do this? Why can't we change this other policy? And people said, all right, you're catching the bug. If you want to make change, you got to get involved, and you got to read all this stuff and make the connections. And I have no regret from that
all right.
moment. But
I
I wish
think,
I did it sooner.
great. I think so. The takeaway here for the students is really to become involved in, in their industry and the professional arm
Yeah,
of that industry. All right, all right. Does anyone have questions for Dr. Maranga?
Dr. Maringa, if you could just repeat your email one more time so I could add it to the chat, please.
sure.
Thank you.
It's Apex,
Mhm,
APEX,
mhm,
LOCATER
mhm.
60 at
Mhm.
gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
So it spells out the word Apex Locator
Mhm. Got it.
with an ER, not an OR. Spell check sometimes may want to try to change it to OR, so it's definitely ER.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for adding that, Sasha. Questions for Dr. Maranga, anyone?
And this is what I do all the time. Take diseased teeth here and make them feel better.
I actually have a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
How would you say, how can students make themselves competitive, in your field? What is something that they could do to stand out? Because you said, grades don't matter as much to you, for example. What are
Yeah.
some of those things that stand out?
Yeah, so volunteering in their spare time during spring break or a week between, in February, or those other things, or if they're available on a, President's Day holiday on that Monday, go and volunteer. I volunteered at so many different clinics, medical offices, to make sure I didn't like medicine, to make sure I really did like dentistry, different things like that. So they're exposed, and you may go, oh, I don't really like that, but you won't really know, so you have to translate what the books say to what the hands are going to feel like. Creative people, like I remember a lot of people in my class were artists and that only took the science classes. Okay. So you don't have to be a chemistry major or biology major. Take something different, a social science, philosophy, something that interests you, and then take all those other required science courses, the big four. You will get a better, GPA in that sense. Go and volunteer, like the way we take pre-dental students and college and high school students. My husband takes a team to Guatemala twice a year in April and October. He's a physician assistant. And there's many organizations online that take young people to, places. You can fundraise or get grants to pay for your way. Other organizations just are dying for people to come, so they pay for you to go. But those are all experiences so that the day when you go on a professional interview, no matter what it is, and they say, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, I go to school, I like the Yankees, and I like pizza or something like that. No, I want to see what's in your heart. I want to see the essence of where you are. And I'll judge that, and I'll know that if you tell me about what's important to you. And, those are kind of things, that you could do as extra. Oh, I see a question about work-life balance. Yeah. Thanks, Jennifer, for that question. Oh, you got to have a really good home situation. I would always have backup babysitters. My parents recently moved from Brooklyn to New Jersey to my sister's house, and I lived on Long Island, and we had, babysitting things, and issues can't come up all the time, but you got to really share a lot of the responsibilities from a spouse to help you out. I one time went to a lecture, and a woman dentist of, renowned fame said, it's okay to leave dirty dishes overnight when you're tired. And people came up to her going, really? I didn't realize you can do that. Yes, you can't be perfect in everything every single day. And you can only spread that part of yourself so many and slice it so many, ways. So sometimes, yeah, things have to go by the wayside. But you know what? Nobody's getting injured if the dirty dishes are staying there overnight. And so that work-life balance of taking care of yourself and making sure you do yoga or get a stretching class in or something like that, something that you enjoy just for yourself. I enjoy painting and sketching, and those are ways that I try to express some of that extra energy. During COVID, I got all those little coloring books that are like, the little things are like this big with like a stack of pencils. My sister would do one, and she would do one in New Jersey, and I would do, and then we'd take pictures and we would show each other like how ours came out. Different things like that. Yeah, so
Well,
let me just ask Johnson's. I went to Jamaica, help dental students. Yes, so both. We took students and dental students from American schools to come. But yes, the Jamaican government also sent their own students and drove like 3 hours from Kingston to come and learn American techniques. So yes, so there is a duality of sometimes, cooperation. So
Dr.
yes,
Miranga, we
I know
don't
you
have
gotta go
time.
off. I'm
Yeah,
so sorry. I was
it's
just looking at all
okay.
of the
The
questions
questions.
now. Any
Yeah.
questions I didn't answer, please, use the email address. I'll get back to you within 48 hours, I promise.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miranga. It was great,
It was
really
great
great
seeing you
information.
again. Thank you
Thank
again
you.
for having me on.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye. So next up, students, is Alexander Loihoff, and he is a senior software engineer at Amazon. Alex? Please unmute Alex.
Yep,
Sunshine.
I'm just gonna do that in one
Got it.
second. Looking for Alex and the. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
There we go.
Uh,
Hi, how are you?
hi, Miriam. It's been a long time.
Welcome.
Thank you. So yeah, my name is Alexander Loiko, and I studied computer science in Brooklyn College. It was a class of 2018. So it's been a few years. And right
Mhm.
now there is a slight change since the time I've signed up to give a talk to where I'm currently working. I'm currently a senior engineer at Coast, but I have spent the past 5 years. So I switched pretty much mid-December. So
Okay, so it just happened. Wow,
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you. It's a change of scenery from the corporate to startup world, which I much needed, and happy to answer questions on how it is in both. So let's begin. So
Yeah.
I've been, for context, I've been at Amazon for the past 5 years and have just started my startup career. So in terms of inspiration and the factors that got me involved, when I was in the fourth grade, I really loved playing computer games. And at some point, a thought popped in my head like, how can I make one? And that was grade school, and obviously I didn't know what I was doing, but my parents ended up getting me a book, which was specifically for kids. There is a book out there for anybody interested, maybe for their kids, that tries to teach you programming based on a very simple language, and by teaching you how to make games specifically. I do think I was a little bit over my head there, and I don't think I was able to make anything reasonable out of it, but I did pick up on the basics. So I picked up the foundations that pretty much helped me along the way, and made my transition into college life much easier than I expected. But so I did not build a game, but I was much more prepared and much more interested in programming, and I knew that ultimately one day I would want to learn it. And I was pretty much set on my major early on, but I understand that a lot of people do not necessarily know if they like it or not. So I do have a section later on to explain what can help you understand if you like it or not. So day to day, as a software engineer, nowadays it does not mean anything. It does not describe what you do day by day, only route. So you do code, that's for sure, but there are different types of software engineers. So I was the software engineer in its most general purpose manner at Amazon. So Amazon, particularly in like the big tech, rarely hire specialized engineers such as solely for front end, which is making the looks of web applications. Then solely for backend, which is the stuff that is hidden that powers the web applications. And another common one is mobile, which specifically is targeted for developers to develop mobile applications for iOS and Android. Now, I've never been a dedicated mobile engineer, but I've one of the examples of the products that I've built from scratch at Amazon was the the Amazon Shopper panel. So you can find it on iOS and Android. If you haven't heard of this product, it's pretty much a way to earn some money on a monthly basis by uploading photos of receipts and filling out surveys. And as I said, I was a part of Amazon Ads, and this product was aimed to help Amazon make advertising studies. So that was my introduction to the the mobile development world. But from there were a lot of different projects. So as I mentioned, there are mobile, front and back end. Although I was not hired for a specific role, I had a chance. There was a lot of mobility, and I was able to work across different teams and work on different products, which allowed me to pick up different parts of the and different technologies of the software engineering. Now, right now at Coast, typical product we're working on is a credit card for businesses, and pretty much I'm working more or less as something called full stack engineer, which is front end and back end. And I don't do any mobile nowadays, but I started my day as usual. It's very flexible nowadays, and you can work from home. Our typical week is about 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. Then a lot of discussions. It's not just sitting in a computer and coding. There are a lot of teamwork involved because you can't really do much on your own. So we constantly discuss technical designs, which is how are we going to address the problem. Well, first it begins with we have this problem. Then it's like, let's come up with a solution. So then there's this part where you propose a solution. So for the mobile application I referenced, it would be, oh, this is the technology we'll use to build it. And hey, we need to talk to designers. Designers need to give us what it's going to look like. Hey, can we build it? Yes. How long will this take? And stuff like this. So I imagine this is very similar in other professions, but it's a very, very common concept in software engineering. So, and I love doing so. I enjoy problem solving, and this is the stuff I particularly like about my job. And there is this feeling when you build something and you relatively fast bring this out to the world. Relatively fast nowadays, it could be anywhere from minutes to hours or days at the most. Nowadays, the process is like you write a piece of code that, say, adds some sort of feature to a website, or I don't know, as a simple example, that would be Gmail introduces a new feature because some programmer wrote it, and then 15 minutes later, maybe a couple hours later, it made it to the end consumer. So if you log in and you try to do something, you now can do this. So this kind of streamlined approach and a lot of problem solving on a daily basis, everything, we only do this because there is some sort of a problem or there is some sort of a need per se. It does not necessarily, I do not necessarily mean a problem in a negative fashion. I mean, something needs to be done. How do we do this? That's the part I absolutely love about the job. And I think it's the engineering part of it. I like the software because one of the reasons I picked software in the first place is you don't really need any sort of parts. You don't need to wait for boards to arrive or components to arrive for your if you're an electrical engineer. You barely need any equipment besides a computer, so it's very cost efficient and very, very fast to receive feedback, and that's what I love. Now, the most challenging aspects are those that are really boring, as in any job. Sadly, no matter what you do, there are parts that are super boring, even to a person who loves the job. And there are definitely phases when you have to do cleanup. Code cleanup is a common thing. It's almost like a chore. It's like every weekend you have to clean up your apartment. That's exactly the same thing with programming. And then there are also administrative tasks, which I personally hate. And thank God right now, and because a lot of other engineers hate it as well. They're a dedicated person nowadays to take care of this, usually a tech lead or some sort of a the exact title differs, but the person is dedicated to lead the team. And the particular administrative part that I did not like is the ticket cutting. So just like any profession, we need to keep track of our work, and there is a ticket tracking system. But there are a few of them. Amazon had an internal one. At Coast, we use something called Jira, which is a fairly popular tool within the industry. But just cutting tickets and writing the detailed description sometimes is so annoying, because I know that for me to make that and to write it as detailed as required, it would be faster for me to just get it done. It never happened in the first place in the code. But yeah, so those are definitely the parts that I do not specifically like. But for me, the problem solving aspect and the prospect of building something useful definitely outweighs the cons. Then who do I think is an ideal fit for this? I don't think there is such a thing as the ideal fit. I think so for example, a tech lead on my team who's been a programmer for probably longer than I was has a lawyer background, and he's amazing at what he does, and it's really, really easy to communicate with him. He's really, really convincing, as a lawyer should be. And he has great technical skills. He has great communication skills, and that definitely simplifies my job. So no matter what your background is, do not, if you're curious about programming, you should not exclude yourself from the profession, or just if you feel like you should consider it, definitely consider it. And but you do have to be a genuinely curious person, because it's not all that straightforward sometimes. So on a happy case, which is 80% of the time, it's very easy. If I need to do something, I either know it, or if I don't know it, it's one Google or two Google searches away. And then there are tons and tons of resources that you can just pretty quickly find the thing you do not know now, and you can continue your work. There are 20% of the cases when that doesn't exist, and those usually take enormous amounts of time. So sometimes you need to be prepared to do that and be mentally ready. I look at it as that when such challenges arise, and it's typically during debugging. So let's say there is a problem that the user encounters, and it's because there is a mistake in the code that we wrote, but we don't know where it is yet. We don't know what it is yet. It's pretty much almost like we need to diagnose the system and fix it. So it's like we're kind of being coding doctors here. We're diagnosing the system and fixing it. And nobody can predict how long it will take. So typically for these sorts of tasks, it could take anywhere from 15 minutes, or it could take days. And I just personally finished working on a problem, and it took me about a week to fix, because the problem was so large. But it happens, and I cannot describe. There is this feeling once you're done with such a task, which you've been working on for a while, and you fixed it. There's just it brings me enormous satisfaction, and I think the majority of the programmers feel the same way. So definitely, if you're curious, no matter what your background is, I'd say give it a shot. However, I have noticed that people who are very strong at basic logic, it doesn't have to be complicated math, it doesn't have to be calculus. Basic logic definitely helps, and that's what I use, because coding essentially is logic. But any amount of math background definitely helps, because it widens your horizon. That's not to say that you cannot learn it once you need it. I don't think I have had to use math. Maybe like I've used something, not calculus, never, but something related to quadratic equations. I probably used a couple of times, probably a handful of times. And then you have to have the desire to dig deep. As I said, there is no guaranteed amount of time how long it will take you, and it's going to be unfruitful up until you actually dig far enough to find the problem. So it might feel frustrating on the way, but then it's an amazing feeling, and you're going to learn a ton on the way. So that being said, there are a couple of things that I wish I did know earlier. So if you feel like you've not learned something well at school, and you feel lazy, and you feel like, oh, there's going to be the job to learn it on, I'll probably not need it. The chances are you will need it, especially if this is a foundations course. And I'm not saying that you have to be perfect or worry about some particular things you've missed, but be cautious. And if you're just lazy at this time, whenever you feel like, yeah, I think this is important, but I feel like I'll learn it at the job, to me, it did not work. And I always advise people against it, because you're under much more stress when you're at work. So now you're under stress to keep your job, to do your responsibilities, fulfill your responsibilities at work, and learn it on top of it, which is supposedly people already expect you to know. And I've done this numerous times, and every single thing I've glossed over in my undergrad came back to haunt me regarding my profession. So strong foundation is the best thing you can do for yourself to have a successful career. Now,
Okay.
thing number two, there is a free resource for students, a bunch of free resources for students, and they might not know about it. So there is such a thing as GitHub Student Pack. Don't worry about taking this down. I'll type it out after my session is over before I head off. So along with my information, so you could reach out. Feel free to reach out if you're interested about anything. But practically, there are a bunch of tools that you would have to otherwise pay for, such as Datadog, or anybody who's ComSci might have heard of it, but pretty much there are probably about 100 or up to 100 resources, which are pretty expensive, but free for students and free for a significant period of time. If you're interested about it or just want to play with it, feel free to use it. It's amazing, and take advantage of it while you're a student. Number three, for those who are not sure, just want to expand their area of knowledge, there's such a thing as meetups.com. And there are numerous meetups where they'll feed you for free, they'll give you drinks for free, and they'll teach you for free. And it doesn't happen every day, but it does happen over the weekend on a regular cadence. One example with called Coffee and Code meetups. And those are amazing for networking and for actually figuring out if you like it. And it's just fun. So if you're interested, keep in mind that those exist. And with this, I'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. We have actually several questions in the chat, but only have time for just to take a few. But you know, we do have your LinkedIn if you allow students to connect with you that way. If they have any questions, would that
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
okay? All
Yeah,
right,
yeah, sure.
great.
So do you want to moderate, or should I just quickly step through the questions?
I'll just, I'll pick a few. So someone who's interested in software engineering, and they want to know if it's right for them, how would you advise that person?
Pardon me. So if they're interested in software engineering, what exactly was the question?
And they're not sure if it's right for them, what
Oh
would you
yeah.
advise?
I would recommend come to a meetup. I think that's the quickest way to find out, because you'll have people from different backgrounds, and if you're you might post on Reddit, but I feel like it's a little bit of a black box, because you might or you might not know who you'll encounter, and it's all a game of chance. So as I said, there are different specializations, and there are workshops during those meetups, and they're completely free. I don't see any single reason why not to attend them, especially if you're curious. I know a decent number of folks who got the jobs that way by just meeting in person. They were hired on the spot relatively, and it's a great way to network. It's a great way to learn. Meetup.
Okay, great. And we have a couple of questions regarding internships, so I'm just kind of gonna combine that, and they want to know if you've done internships before you had gotten this position.
Yes, and that's actually one more thing I wish I knew earlier, the Magner Center. And Miriam, I believe you were the one who set me up with my very first
Yes.
internship with the MTA. So I want to take the opportunity and thank you for that. That was definitely the kickstart. So I think there is a relationship between educational entities, and Brooklyn College in particular, and certain companies. So that being said, I did two internships. One internship was only a summer long, and the one with the MTA was way longer. It was a very, very fun team. I can highly recommend that one, although it might not sound as attractive just by the name. If you're not into, trains getting delayed, it's completely different on the inside. So indeed, there are a lot of politics involved, but as far as what you can learn, what kind of people work there, they're amazing. I was on the bus department, and it's a paid internship, and it's year round. So it's an amazing opportunity, and there are many more.
Which
I know
you bring up an excellent point, is that you can't just, okay, I'm only gonna look for Facebook or something or Google or something that we know is technically computer science, when every company can use tech people. Is that correct, Alex?
exactly.
All right.
And some people specifically do not want to work at the big companies because of the corporate, including me
Mhm.
at this point. That's not to say that Amazon wasn't a great place. It is amazing. It just, for me, I feel like I'm a little under 30. So if there is a time when I can risk it all and just go try it out, it's probably the time now.
Well, you gave great advice. Thank you so much for
Sure.
spending the time, taking the time out of your day, and
Yeah, I'll
giving
hang
great
around.
advice to our students.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'll hang around for a little bit to answer questions. Feel free to post if I see one, I'll answer one. But I unfortunately have to drop for a meeting in about 10 minutes. So thanks again, and hope this was helpful.
Thank you again. Okay, so moving right along with our tight schedule, next we have Katie O'Donnell. And Katie is the Assistant Director at Aon. Katie,
Hello, everyone.
welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Okay. So would you like me to moderate the questions or just jump right in? Or you want to
Um,
do a little intro?
I can give a quick intro, and then I guess
Okay.
if you want to moderate the questions or whatever is easier.
Great.
So my name's Katie O'Donnell. I am with Aon, which is an insurance brokerage. I've out of their New York office. I've been with Aon for a little under 5 years now, and I work on the actuarial side. Because Aon's a very large company, so there's a lot of different roles. So I'm specifically on the actuarial side, which is kind of more analytics related, but I can get into more details of what specifically an actuary does.
Okay, great. What factors inspired you to select your current career?
So I was always interested in math growing up. That was kind of my favorite subject. Always, anything related to math was what I wanted to do. And originally, when I was in high school, everyone was like, "Oh, you should do engineering. If you like math, do engineering." So I originally thought I wanted to do engineering, and then I kind of learned a bit more of what an engineering job entails and realized that was not the job I wanted to do. So then I was like, okay, I'll study math, and then originally thought maybe I would do like teaching and be a math teacher, because I think often when people hear math, that's like the most common job people associate with a math degree. But I kind of wanted to do a little, I don't know, something more, maybe dip my toe in the business world. So I found out about actuarial science, and it's kind of a really nice blend between math, but then also in the business. So basically, what it is we analyze risk for insurance companies, and I mean a lot of other things, but that's kind of the main role. So we use a lot of probability, statistics, all that fun stuff that a lot of people usually give me a crazy look when I say I like to do and chose to do for a living. But yeah, so it's basically using a lot of those skills and kind of looking at a company and seeing like what their risks are and anticipating how much insurance they'll need to cover those risks. So it uses, yeah, so we use a lot of, like I said, math, but then also a lot of kind of coding software and Excel and all that exciting stuff to be able to simulate stuff and learn more about it. So that's kind of what led me to the career, is that I got to use these math skills, but I also kind of felt like I was doing something and working in the business world and seeing what that corporate life was. And it's a really good balance of the two.
Great. Could you give us an example of like a project you frequently work on or anything you
Sure,
can
yeah. So
share?
this is probably going to be very specific. So the nature of the company is, like I said, we're an insurance brokerage, which basically means we're the middleman between companies and insurance companies. So it's kind of confusing in that we don't actually sell insurance, but we kind of just help facilitate deals. So my main projects that I work on are like reinsurance placements, which is insurance for insurance companies, which is a whole nother like confusing thought to think of. But basically, what we do is we have these renewals. So much like, if you have a personal insurance, every year you maybe have to renew your car insurance or something like that. It's the same way insurance companies need to renew their like large package insurance as well. So we get the data from the client and we do a lot of data cleaning. So that uses a lot of either kind of like scrubbing in Excel or R or other data frames. And then once we have the data in a clean set, we do actuarial analyses. So we'll kind of look at the data, see like based off of the risk they have, how much loss we expect them to have for the coming year. So it requires Excel analyses. We have a stochastic modeling system, and once we come up with a final, end result estimate, we'll present that to the client and say, okay, this is what we're estimating your future losses are going to be for the next year. And then based off of that, we kind of hand over our numbers to the broker. So I'm more on the analytics side, which is, kind of like the numbers behind the scenes. But then we also have brokers at Aon, and they're the ones who kind of are like placing the deals. So they go out to the market and they'll, try to get people who to want to buy the insurance and help, make the deal done. And we'll help support that. We'll have conversations and just discuss the numbers and discuss anything we can to help them, because usually what happens is the reinsurer will come up with a number, and then we have our number, and we have to kind of find a middle ground and come up with something in order to get the deal done. So it's kind of very collaborative. There's lots of meetings, there's lots of back and forth. But that's kind of majority of the projects we work on are that sort of where we go through the data, we come up with a number, and then we have to get that deal done and get the number placed.
Okay, I actually could almost see it in my head, Katie. Like with your description is very, very good. So knowing that, the types of projects that you do work on, who would be a good fit for this type of career?
So for actuarial specific, I guess I can do first, but then, like I said, we have a lot of other roles as well. But for actuarial specific, definitely someone who likes math. You gotta enjoy the numbers. So like I love, sitting on my computer and like doing spreadsheets and numbers all day. So you have to like numbers. I think it also is someone who is like self-motivated and like really wants to learn. In order to be an actuary, you don't need like a graduate degree or a PhD, but you have to take exams in order to become certified. So kind of like accountants where you have to take like the tests. It's the same thing. We have to take tests. So it requires work outside of work in order to like study for these exams and pass them. So you definitely have to be motivated and like want to learn. I think in terms of, anyone who's maybe interested in like a finance role but doesn't necessarily want to work the hours of a finance job, this definitely has a bit more, less crazy hours, but still, is a good work-life balance and that sort of thing. And like someone who wants to be in the business world. So like I said, we're interacting with clients, we're interacting with like potential people. So there is, even though it is kind of like a numbers job, you have to be able to communicate and have those skills, which I know sometimes like certain math jobs, you're more like at a computer all day, not speaking to anyone. Like this is definitely a nice balance of the two, which is one of the reasons why I like it, is that you get to use the math, but also interpersonal skills. But that being said, like I said, Aon, we have, all different roles. So like we also have kind of the broker side. So those are more the people, the ones who are making the deals. And they're like definitely someone, if you're interested in like broking deals and, kind of like, it's like lots of meetings and calling and, you still have to like work with spreadsheets and know what's going on, but it's definitely more, what's the word, like social and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of, and then there's roles from way in between. So definitely that's one of the nice things about being at such a large company is there are a lot of opportunities, like depending on where you see yourself and like what you want to do. If you want some sort of business related job, we probably have some sort of field for you there.
Great. Is there anything you know now that you wish you knew earlier that you could share with students?
I mean, this is like a great question. There's probably a million things. But at least for me, I think the biggest thing that I know now is that just kind of like things will work out in the end. I know when I was in school, I would stress over absolutely everything, whether it was a test or a project or an interview, or like if I was in enough clubs and had enough, things on my resume. And I think, while that stuff is obviously important, like one bad test grade isn't going to break it. Like looking back now, like I don't even really remember, specific classes and stuff like that. So I think it's, obviously you want to do well in school and stuff, but like try not to stress absolutely everything. Or like now, I do a lot of interviewing for internships and stuff like that. And I remember when I was in that position and how stressed I was, when meanwhile we're just kind of trying to get a sense of your personality and see if you'd be a good fit for the job. And it's not necessarily, like we're not trying to grill you and like make sure you can answer every question perfectly and that sort of thing. So I think that those are kind of like my biggest advice is just kind of like take a deep breath. Usually it's not as big of a deal as you think it will be. And, it'll work out. Even now, I still have to remind myself that sometimes when I have a lot of things going on, like it's going to be okay. Everything's going to work out. And, things that might seem like a big deal right now, 5 years from now aren't going to be. So try to, take everything with a grain of salt.
Wow. I think that's really excellent advice. Um, let's get into some questions. Does anyone have questions for Katie?
Yeah, so we have two questions in the chat. The
Okay.
first question is, your job sounds very time restricting. How do you find balance?
So yeah, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say it's that bad. There's definitely like certain times that are busier than others. So usually we'll have like, if we have a placement, coming up, then usually it's a bit busier. But then at the same time, if there's not a lot of placements coming up, it's a bit quieter and we'll do, but you have more time to do like peer studies and side projects and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of taking advantage of the more quiet times. And then, so that way when you're busy, like it won't be going on forever and that eventually things will calm down. And just like having, being able to set boundaries and like not take on too much and that sort of thing as well, I think is really important.
Another question from Jennifer. Hello, Katie. What classes or projects would you suggest I take now to prepare myself for this profession?
So I think kind of like I said, definitely math-based courses are important for this. So, definitely like a probability course, financial mathematics, statistics, and then also, econ and accounting and that sort of thing is also helpful. So definitely like kind of a balance of math classes and then some of the, more finance related if possible.
We can't hear you, Sasha.
Sorry,
There we
I was
go.
just pulling something up. And I have a question for you. How can students make themselves competitive candidates for your field?
So I think, certain things that we look at is like, both kind of like the two sides. So we want to make sure you're like technically able to do the job, but also, like I said, the interpersonal stuff I think is pretty important. So definitely like prepping for interviews, like you can really tell the difference of someone who just kind of joined the call and is taking, going for it. Whereas if you like go and prepare and, you don't want to have answers scripted, but like just comfortable answering some basic questions and be able to speak about yourself and put yourself in the best light possible, I think is definitely really important. For this career, like I said, there's exams. So if a candidate has an exam passed before they apply, that definitely makes a difference, or has a sense of at least what the exam program is and that sort of thing. And then just, like being involved in things, whether it's, I don't think it necessarily isn't as important like what sort of things you're involved in, but just to see that you have, interest and you're involved in clubs or maybe, some leadership experience, I think definitely helps stand out and just like can see that you can multitask and manage classes with other activities as well.
Right, well, I think those are really great tips. So everyone take heed. I want to thank you, Katie, for your time. Thank you for sharing, and giving advice, great advice and tips to our students.
Sure, of course, I'm happy to. And if anyone wants to reach out or connect in the future, I'd be happy to.
Thank you for that. We definitely have your LinkedIn profile there in the chat. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to continue with our program. And the next alumni and speaker that we have up is Juan Sebastian Ovali. Are you on, Juan?
Yep. Do
Okay,
you see me?
great. Yes, I see you now. Welcome.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Juan is a data analyst for CKE Restaurants, and I'll let him do a brief intro before we jump into the questions. Juan?
Yeah. So hey guys, my name is Juan Ovalle. Like Miriam said, I am from the class of 2010. So I can't believe like 14 years ago. That's just
Oh my
mind-boggling.
gosh.
Um, today I'm a director of data analytics here at CKE. But back then I majored in math and econ. And so it's an awesome opportunity to be able to speak to you guys.
Great. So we're gonna jump right in. Juan, what factors inspired you to select your current career?
Yeah. Well, I loved unearthing patterns and doing unstructured problem solving. That was something that kind of I've always liked. And so once I got out of graduate school, I started my career in management consulting. And in that stint, I went to a conference on data science, and I fell in love with the subject of data science. Just powerful stuff that we see today. I mean, you go to Chat GPT. I mean, that's the pinnacle of all that is like data science and what's cool about it. So that was what inspired me.
Great. Could you give us an example of a project or something you know, work on frequently?
Absolutely. So I'm in the prediction business. So types of questions that I get to answer are things like, so why are the brands performing well, and what could we be doing more so that we can continue growing the brands? Um, then when we give the recommendation, they'll say, okay, out of the 5 things that you told us that we should do, we're going to do these 3. Can you give us a forecast of how many sales we can project into the next year? Um, and then like there's other like more product oriented stuff, like so anytime you go to a restaurant and you see that receipt, all that data is what I get to see. And
Mm,
so I can answer questions of like, hey, when someone ordered this burger, what else are they ordering so that we can upsell them like when they're in the restaurant. So it's those sort of kind of prediction slash trying to get down to what's going well and what's not going so well. Uh,
wow,
that's the
that
bulk of the type of projects I
that's
work
really
on.
interesting. And the fact that you used the burger as an example, like something we could all immediately relate to.
Yeah, I
Our food.
honestly, my like elevator spiel of what I do is like I crunch numbers on biscuits and burgers. That's that's the short form of what I do.
Okay, well, it sounds very interesting. What would you say you enjoy the most about this?
hmm So the 3 things I would say I enjoy the most are like the fact that I get to do problem solving on questions that are like so out in the like out of the blue. During COVID, my team was in charge of trying to predict how COVID was going to progress and what that was going to do for sales. Like who knows? But you had to come up with some sort of prediction. The second thing is I get a fair amount of computer programming. I get to do that. I love that. So it's really cool. And then the last one is the storytelling. So after you've analyzed the data, you've applied statistics, math, and all that, it's actually putting it into a story that you can present to the leadership team and influence them to go in a certain direction.
Okay, and on the flip side of that, what's most challenging?
You're in the prediction business, and sometimes
Okay,
your predictions aren't good, um, or they're bad news, right? Like, um, someone may have worked really hard on a particular idea, and then it comes to us to to forecast how much sales it's going to generate. And if you say that, hey, it's not going to generate that much, or it's not that
mm,
great a decision, um, that's personal. And so, people will be like, oh, I don't believe in your model. Like, uh, I think your data is wrong and blah, blah, blah. And so you have to, that's kind of like the human side of what's a very technical subject, is just that you're in the prediction business.
mm.
So you got to influence, you got to be able to speak to people in a way that you also don't sound dismissive. And so that's the challenging part.
Okay, I could see that. I can imagine. Okay. Um, what, I'm sorry, could you describe, you know, the type of person who might be a good fit for this career?
Yeah. So the overarching things is like you gotta love problem solving, and you gotta be curious, and then kind of like a technical self-learner. Um, a few folks that have talked so far have like a recurring theme of like you don't need to be a 4.0 student knowing
Right,
everything in your textbook.
right.
Um, but you just have to have the drive to teach yourself stuff. I don't know everything. I was a math and econ major. I didn't major in computer science. So when I'm doing computer programming, a lot of the time I just got to look up stuff. And now with Chat GPT, we really don't have an excuse to not be able to teach ourselves, because you could just ask the question and Chat GPT will write the code for you. So just being a self-starter.
Okay,
Uh,
that's good
I was
advice.
oh, and to add to that, like from majors perspective, math majors, econ majors, computer science, and finance may be, good majors to feed into like a data analytics career.
Okay.
Anyone can do it, but those majors may like, if you're in that major, you probably like data analytics.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate you connecting it to the majors that we have here. So it kind of makes it clearer. Um, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier?
So I would say three words came to mind when I read that question. It was the importance of learning leadership as a subject, the importance of grind, and the importance of written communications. And let me get into a little bit into those three.
Okay.
Um, the importance of leadership is, as you progress in your career, you're gonna be leading teams. You're leading people, and these are people that are trying to nurture their careers and stuff. Um, so if you're a bad leader, that's the fastest way to kill a whole team dynamic. So just knowing about leadership. I got my biggest leadership lessons when I went into the army as an infantry officer for a while. That was learning those lessons and understanding how do you motivate people to get something done, and you being able to roll up the sleeves and get beside them when they need your help. That's really important. So that's number one on leadership. The second one is on the importance of grind. A lot of you folks that are on the call right now are probably in your early to mid 20s. This is your time to grind. Like, this is not the time to sleep. Um, the the only way you progress is when everyone else is sleeping, you're the one putting in the hard work. Because once you get, married, kids come around, it gets a little bit more difficult to be able to put in the long hours and stuff. So do that now. Um, when you're 25, you have little responsibilities, and so you get a chance to, yeah, put in the long hours. If someone, I know that we talk about work-life balance and stuff, but honestly speaking, if you don't have kids at home or whatever, work later, wake up earlier, because that'll pay off later on, and that's what will allow you to grow. And then the last one, the written communications, is just in the technical subjects, we tend to, learn a lot of math and stuff, but we're not great at communicating. But if you're in data analytics, you're in the business of influencing senior leaders. And if you can't just get to the point quickly, you're going to lose them. So it's important to have those written communications.
Wow, that's really excellent advice. Thank you. We're gonna take some questions for you from the chat. We have several, and my partner Sasha's gonna help with that. Sasha?
Yeah.
Yes, so the first question is, what does a day at work look like as a data analyst?
Day at work. So you tend to have a bunch of questions. So you have a lot of meetings. And in those meetings, there's, people want to know what's going to happen into the future when they make that decision. And that's when that's your cue. Like, as people, hey, we think we should run this promotion. It'd be really cool, da da da. But what's the forecast? Hey, Juan, we're going to need a forecast from you, blah, 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 blah. And so you're in meetings, and then you take those questions and you just start working on them. Um, some are a little bit more routine than others, but by the time, no one's going to pay you a good salary to answer easy questions. So if you're making good money, is because you're answering the tough questions. And so, like, yeah, my time is spent like trying to figure out stuff that's like hard. Like, I don't know the answer. It's like, all right, let's try to put some numbers together, make a model, and try to predict the future.
Another question, what would be the main things to study if I want to career in data analytics?
Three things. Take a machine learning course. You could do that on Coursera for free. Second one, do some Python. coding. That's the coding language of the right now of machine learning. You don't need to be an expert, but just know enough to be dangerous. And the third one is SQL or SQL. That's the language that we use to query data out of data warehouses. If you're doing any serious data analytics, you're working with data warehouses, and if you don't know how to query your own data, you're just you're just slower because you got to wait on someone else to query that data for you. So you might as well know how to query it yourself.
Wonderful, thank you. Somebody asked, I'm interested in data analytics. What path should I follow to get an internship or a job?
What path should you follow? I think smaller companies or consulting is the best boot camp to get started in these sort of fields. I did a combination of both. My first job was a small consulting firm. The hours were brutal. The work-life balance, it kind of goes away for a little bit, but it set me up for success once you get into a corporate career where it's a little bit slower. The pace is not as fast, but like you've done it, you've put in the work. So when the projects get tough and you got to lean in a little bit more, you have a little bit more resilience than some of the folks that just started their careers in corporate. So consulting, startups is a great place to start.
Somebody asked, what skill should I have down by the time I'm a senior? And the person is currently a junior in college.
What skills should I have down by the time I am a senior? Um, have take at least a course, like an intro course in programming. So, um, back, man, it sounds so old when you say back in my day, um, it was intro to C++. I imagine today it's intro to Python. Take that if because some of my interview questions that I ask candidates is like, tell me why do you use a for loop? I'm not asking you to code, just tell me what it is. So if you took that intro course, you would pass that question. Um, and what other skills? Mm, no Excel. Oh yeah, like I mean, Excel's like you won't get credit for it, but like if you aren't good at it, like that puts you on the naughty list on my team. Like, so no Excel, know some Python, take a machine learning course, so like or a statistics course. Those are important. When I'm asking in my interviews to a junior data analyst, I'm asking them simple questions like what's the point of a regression? Like why would I do that? You would learn that in an intro to statistics course. By the way, shameless plug, I am hiring for a data analytics analyst. Um, we're out here in Tennessee, so if you want to change in pace, um, the submit your resume.
Awesome. Somebody else had a question. What are the top tools you use to perform data analysis?
Mhm. So Python, so some sort of like your preferred coding platform to code. I tend to use the something called Anaconda. It's the software that allows me to code in Python. Um, and then you should just know some tool that lets you do SQL. In my company, we use Snowflake. That's a cloud-based tool. You don't need to know exactly Snowflake, but you should just know how to query in SQL. And you can download something like MySQL for free, and that comes with like sample data. And so if you know how to use that, you're good to use any other thing. Um, the last thing I use a lot is Tableau. It's a it's a data visualization tool. Um, I know Tableau has like free versions that allow you to practice on it, but any sort of data visualization software would be good. So Tableau, Power BI, or even MicroStrategy. If you know all three, great. If you know one of those three, you're good enough.
Great, thank you. And another question is what resources would you recommend for anybody interested in data?
Um, yeah, Coursera. That's my preferred platform. I am taking courses currently right now on Coursera. So you can take intro to machine learning courses there, intro to Python coding. So anything that you weren't able to justify through your major because hey, I need to graduate now, so I don't have time to take all these other courses. Finish your major, graduate, but go on Coursera and take those free courses.
And we just got another question. Is it sufficient to have concept clarity in machine learning, or do I need to do a big project to pass the interview?
Um, I think I don't I don't typically ask for like a big project, but I wouldn't ask you to prove it to me, but I will ask you about a project that you've done. And I may ask you like, oh wait, when you told me that you ingested the data through a CSV, can you just kind of tell me like what were some of the things you ran into when you were ingesting the data? What were some of the challenges? So if you haven't done a project, you wouldn't be able to answer that question. So do you need to do a big project? I guess you should so you can get your hands dirty with coding so you can be able to answer a question like that. I'm currently taking a Coursera data analytics certificate. Is that enough to get an internship? Yeah, because I mean, presumably you're gonna graduate with a BA or a BS, and now you're overlaying on top of that the certification. Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell
Hey,
you,
oh,
we
I'm
tend to
sorry.
look, I was just gonna say, we tend to look for attitude more than the skills. Like, we know that you're not gonna be able to work on the most difficult projects. Like when I'm hiring this data analytics analyst, I know I'm gonna have to teach them a lot, but what I want to make sure is, are you teachable? Do you have the drive to be taught? And do you have some basic skills? So, yeah, your certificate communicates, yeah, you have some basic skills. The rest of it that you need to prove to me is, do you have the drive to learn?
Hey, well, right there's some insiders tips, right? Some recruiters tips there that we didn't expect, but it's great to have. So thank
Yeah,
you so much, Juan,
no, my
for
pleasure.
taking some time out of your day to help our students and to
Yes,
give this
please.
great advice.
Um, you know, to anyone on the call, like I love mentoring. I love talking about like career growth and stuff like that. So if you ever want to just reach out, please do so. I'd be happy to chat. Okay. Have a
Thank
good
you,
one, guys.
Juan. Thank
See ya.
you. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you all students for your great questions. We are moving right along with the program. And next we have a BC alum, Dwayne Benz. And he is a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Hi, Dwayne. Let's unmute him. There we go.
How are
Hi,
you?
how are you? Nice to see you again.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of come back and talk and chat with individuals who are interested in the field. It's a less conventional sort of field that you normally see coming out of New York. And I get that question all the time. How did the how did the guy from Queens find himself in wildlife biology?
Right, right, absolutely. And we've had Dwayne on a number of panels, so we really thank you for doing this,
Absolutely.
honestly. And we're gonna jump right in. If you want to give a brief introduction before we, go into our questions, feel free to do it now.
Absolutely. So, my name is Dwayne Benz. Obviously, I'm stationed in San Diego right now. I'm originally from Queens, from Richmond Hill, right around the corner from Jamaica Hospital. And I don't operate as a wildlife biologist right now. I'm a refuge manager, which is a slightly different track, very similar skill sets, but a slightly different set of responsibilities. But my job before this, when I was in Denver, Colorado, I was a wildlife biologist working for the inventory and monitoring program. So I'm out here right now. I'm actually the refuge manager for the San Diego National Wildlife Refuge in a slightly rural part of San Diego.
Thank you for that. What, Dwayne, inspired you to select this career?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're right, we don't hear it that often right here in Queens, but but
Right.
we're glad that you are.
It's the number one question I get. Number one. So I come from a West Indian background, and a part of their culture, especially my dad's side, from being from Jamaica, they like fishing a lot. And there was something that my dad kind of instilled in me, being out in nature, fishing. And for them, it was, going out and getting fish. But I started observing it as I kept doing it as an opportunity that I was like experiencing myself in the natural environment, outside of, the concrete jungle. So what inspired me to kind of get into this field, if I'm being vulnerable here, it was a very specific instance. I harmed a fish for my convenience, and then that set off a cascade of like thoughts and like, what am I doing with my role in this world? Um, and then I started kind of questioning myself, even as a teenager, of like my moral and ethical stances on what am I going to give back to this world. And I found that wildlife biology was an opportunity. I didn't immediately know it then, but I realized it was an opportunity for me to talk for and help a community, i.e., wildlife, that a lot of people, especially in the inner cities, don't always have a connection to, not out of their own volition, but it's just how we are. We're in, more of a city environment. And I wanted to do my best to work for a group that was, I guess, less taken care of. Doctors are all over the place. They're doing great. Politicians are working for the people, etc. We need somebody to work for animals and work for the nature that supports us, whether we know it or not.
Wow. I'm really impressed.
Oh,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you. What is an example of a project that you work on?
Yeah, so I'll talk about two different tracks because my career as a strict wildlife biologist was not too long ago. It was about maybe 4 years ago for me, the transition. And when I was in inventory monitoring, it was a role where you could either go down and be like the wildlife biologist. You think of, Steve Irwin. You think of really being out there with the animals, taking data on their populations every single day and making sure their populations are not fluctuating for some nefarious reason in the environment caused by us or maybe more naturally. So it's more of a protection sort of role, but don't understand that protection through science. But then the role I specifically was working in was a blend of that. I was taking that data, going down to like wetlands. Wetlands are ponds or lakes that support a lot of different wildlife, whether they're ducks, whether they're small aquatic mammals, fish, etc. I would go down to some of these areas and start to understand some of the environmental drivers of why they were in certain areas, what made them pond so much, how much food they were producing, for the migrating waterfowl that are coming from Canada and Alaska all the way down to South America, and making sure that they have enough food for their journey so they don't kind of tap out, without enough calories. So that was the role that I kind of worked on. I developed more of the protocols. How do we understand the system versus just going out there and be like, oh, we have 13,000 ducks that are coming through this time of year. I started developing the protocols of how to rigorously and statistically, in a statistically rigorous way, how do I actually uh, get a process that makes sure that I'm not double counting, I am not counting incorrectly. And if you think of like a lab experiment, wildlife biology is just a lab experiment in the field for a lot of things that you can't control. So that was more of my role as a wildlife biologist. I would also, produce protocols for how to count deer properly, so we understand how much pressure one deer species is providing against, like the bison that we had on a certain refuge, because we have to make sure that there's enough grass and food for both of them if we're going to make sure that the populations don't dip and go into a negative. So that's the wildlife biology side. It's more akin to what you would do there. But a refuge manager, how does that operate right now? It takes this wildlife biology principles, it's an understanding of the science, and it puts into direct application of altering the habitat. Like how, if I know that I have a species that's doing that, I've counted it, and I know that they're on a decline, how do I alter the habitat to provide them the opportunity to rebound better? So one thing that we do is, in my refuge specifically, we have a threatened and endangered species from the Endangered Species Act. You may have heard of it. So one of them is Kino checker spot. It's a little butterfly. We work with the zoo to come out, collect the butterflies, rear them in the zoo so they produce larvae, and then re-release them back as a way of augmenting or increasing their population so they can withstand some of the environmental factors that they're dealing with here. And then it can be something completely different where on another day, I can be working with a set of volunteers to get them out and do some habitat restoration to, again, make sure that the habitat is good for the native and endangered species that we have.
Very interesting. Is there a part that you enjoy most? Like, what would you say you enjoy most about being in this career? And then on the flip side of that, what's most challenging?
Yeah, I implore everybody, if you haven't, visit this country. Visit the different cultures, the different ways of life, especially in the mountain region like Colorado, Utah, etc., where I had my experiences, to the Midwest, to the West, etc. To see how people live. And I think you learn a lot coming from New York. New York has its own, I say this as a preface, but New York has its own set of like benefits that you get from living there. But you will learn a lot once you go around. And what I learned is there's a lot of stimulation in this job. I can be literally in muck in a pond, counting ducks, banding ducks. Like I've gone up to Canada and banded thousands of ducks before so that we understand how they're migrating from Canada down to to South America, and understanding how do we understand the populations and set hunt quotas, etc. I can be doing that, and then the same day I can be in an office running rigorous statistical analysis on the data that I just got, or doing something completely different, writing, figure out how do I write a new protocol to like I said, understand the population better. So you have everything kind of mashed into one. And the reason why I gave that preface statement is that this job is a really good blend of a blue collar job and a highly intellectual, what you would more consider a white collar job. And that's the part that I love. I love using my hands. Many know I went to aviation high school. I got certified as an airplane mechanic before this career. And my ability to work with tools and stuff just kind of really translated over to just working with my hands. So that's the part that I really love. It's just a mix of all the different worlds into one. And then the most challenging part, I think, are the people. It's trying to, and I think this is challenging across all scientific principles. It's translating the science into something that people can readily enact in their world to do better. So I think, I don't think everybody should want to be a wildlife biologist. I think, you should be aware of some of the scientific principles and like how your sector or your career is impacting the environment around you, so that you can we can do better things towards a better homeostasis between the more developed world and then the more natural world. And I think sometimes it's a little bit hard to purvey some of the nuance that it takes to do conservation in your normal life, but it's not impossible.
Okay, that being said, who would be an ideal fit, or just a fit? Doesn't even have to be ideal, but
Yeah.
what type of student would be a fit for this career?
I think someone that's detail oriented, like I said before, with that mix of white collar, blue collar, someone that's like really impassioned and willing to get dirty and embrace like both of those aspects, and know that, you may have to like, truck a bunch of scientific equipment, 5 miles down a trail, but it's to do science. It's to do something highly intellectual. So somebody that's detour, like I said, somebody that's detour oriented, willing to kind of get out there, get dirty, and embrace that side of our existence, that more natural side, the side that we sometimes don't see, but is so beautiful if you truly open yourself to it. And somebody that is willing to be, willing to go down to the scientific route. It's some of the analysis, some of the questions, hypotheses we ask are very similar to what you find in like medical research. Structurally, I would say, not similar, categorically, but structurally, it's very similar. The amount of rigor it takes, the amount of research it takes. Like anything else, if you dive deep enough, you will find a lot.
Oh, it's very intriguing. Is there anything you know now that you wish you knew earlier that you could share with students?
Yeah, actually, yes. I would say, I kind of learned this as I was in grad school. But to be a sort of like force in the field, you really have to balance some of the more conventional scientific principles and understanding ecology. But then you also would do well and be highly competitive in the field, especially coming out of grad school or undergrad, to know statistics really well and high level statistics. Because like Juan said before, when you have to send your analysis to somebody, your data to get analyzed by somebody else, you can then do that yourself. And then, you would hope that you have a supportive team, but sometimes you don't have to wait on your analysis to come back before you can make a decision. You can just do it on your own. So you become just this like one person wrecking ball, and highly competitive in the field. And then the other thing I would say, and it's more on a personal note, I would say, I think there are merits to everyone's, to however you decide what works for you. But I would say if you do decide that you want to have a family life, have kids, get married, I would say that you make sure you put balance to that also. Like career aspirations are amazing and you should strive for them, but don't forget about your personal side, because what I've found, even with myself, is when I am happier at home, in whatever capacity that may be, I show up to work as a better person. I am more willing to put in that time. I am more willing to go the extra mile, because I myself am more fulfilled on all sides of me. And fulfillment comes more from the professional side. As I think there's something of perspective you get as you get older and things in life become more important. So I would just say, don't forget about all aspects of the sides that make you, and make sure you're being fulfilled in multiple ways. Money is amazing. It's more personal note, but money is amazing, but money always doesn't make you happy. So make sure you have a balance there.
Oh, that's really great advice, you guys. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Sasha's gonna take over right now and field some of the questions from the chat. If we have any, Sasha?
Yes, I did get a question about programs or internships, if any, have pushed you forward in your career.
Yeah, I actually was a part of, I'd implore everyone, if you want to get into the conservation side, I'm specifically talking about the federal, where I work, federal government. But one, you can look into field courses. They offer them. The Wildlife Society is a professional organization that offers field courses in training biologists in field techniques. They offer one cohort up in Vermont and another one, I think, in North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. So I would say getting that exposure to the techniques, getting the exposure to the people in the field so they can kind of give you the rundown of what exactly a day looks like. I would say take opportunities that you can, even in New York, to get out and work with some wildlife related projects. There's something called like the Mianus River Gorge. It's a conservation area up in like the Westchester area. They work with coyotes. There is, and I've personally kind of worked with them. There's the Gotham Coyote Project. That's another one led by a researcher now, I think, at the Museum of Natural History. So I think just making contacts and looking diligently for wildlife-related projects in New York are going to be your best bet. I specifically worked with also the Prospect Park Alliance in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, and they had a project working with geese down there. And you wouldn't think, but they're all over. It's just you kind of have to look a little bit. So aside from like little internship projects, they have other more rigorous fellowship projects where I worked called the Director Resource Assistant Fellowship. And that was an 11-week internship that was all across the nation. They picked, I think, 100 different candidates, and you go and do research for 11 weeks. And after that, you get what's called direct hire authority for the federal government. And it's pretty much a fast track to getting a full-time permanent position that you beat out so many other people because they just have to kind of start from scratch. So it's a really, really in-depth, great opportunity. It's also called the Pathways Program through USGS, which is a sister agency. And then this US Fish and Wildlife also has a new program called Science as a Service. So it's their opportunity to kind of get people in, vet them, work on projects, and then evaluate their opportunity to kind of get a permanent position. And they've been highly successful.
Thank you. And we got another question. What would you say are some growing concerns in this field, and how do you manage stress?
How do I manage stress? Growing concerns. I think you guys have heard. I'm forgetting the exact term, but it's essentially people getting so down about climate change and the multivariate sort of impacts that it's having on the world that it's becoming like a real source of like anxiety for people in the field, because the problems that we were assessing before used to be 1 or 2 different predictor variables. Now they're like 5 or 6, and things that you can't figure out for years on end. So it becomes a thing with people in this field where they want to do better, and then they see the decline of a species that they've been working on for so long, for 20 years, and it almost feels like they can't do anything about it. So I think it's just time. I think it's when we understand climate change more intimately and understand how to measure it sometimes a little bit better, we will make progress. And I think it'll be the individuals that are coming through this reality of climate change, to that they're more ingrained with it and be able to take it to the next sort of level. So really looking forward to the people coming up in the field to really make the strides with us right now. And then managing stress, I think what I said before, making sure that all parts of my life are being taken care of, professional, personal side, etc. And I personally make sure you just have good communication. I have really good communication with my boss. I've always had that, and I think once you do that, and you can be open and vulnerable with your boss, you tend to see that when you're vulnerable and open, they will reciprocate in kind. And we're all people at the end of the day, and we understand. It's very rare you'll meet like the true person that just has a bad attitude, really bad attitude, bad leadership, but most people will understand kind for kind.
Wow. Well, that's definitely great to close on. Thank you, Dwayne. We
Absolutely.
actually do have a couple other questions in the chat, but that's all that we have time for right now. We do have your LinkedIn, and if it's
Yes.
okay, if students are able to reach out with any other
100%.
questions.
100%. Feel free to reach out to me by email, by calling, anything of the sort. I like Juan, I actually mentor quite a bit of like directors, resource assistant fellowship fellows. So I'd be happy to do that for individuals who are in New York and want to get in the field.
Okay, that's great. One other thing, because I did see where someone asked about information about the occupation. So if there's a resource link that you could share in the chat,
Absolutely.
just in general, that students might be able to look at as a resource, that would really be appreciated.
Of course. Thank you for
Okay.
your time, everyone, and good luck. I'm always here as a resource. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we're going to move on with the program, and our next and final alumni speaker is Genesis Caceres. Genesis?
Hi,
Welcome.
everyone. Hi, thank you for having me. Good afternoon, folks.
Genesis works with Housing Works, where she is a licensed master social worker. And I'll let you introduce yourself, Genesis.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Genesis Cáceres. I use she, her pronouns. And like Maria mentioned, I work at Housing Works. I have my license to practice social work. But right now within Housing Works, my title is program coordinator. And actually got the good news that I'll be moving into a clinical supervisor position later on in the month. That's my name, that's who I am, and that's what I do, and that's my work.
Hey, congratulations on your latest accomplishments. Let's jump right into the questions, which is the first, what factors inspired you to select this career path?
Yes. So growing up, I realized that there weren't a lot of people who practice social work. And when I say social work, I mean like case managers, therapists, because it is a very broad profession that were reflective of me. I